Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our livestock market report. I'm Coulter Brown from the Northern Ag Network. This report is of course sponsored by our friends at Ag Risk Advisors. This is definitely the time of year to start thinking about livestock risk protection. You can insure feeders, fed cattle, even unborn calves, and you can do so cheaper than you can with a put option. So reach out to Ag Risk Advisors or visit their website lrpadvisors.com. You know, the cattle futures have been rather disappointing over the last month. The cash too, just behaving very stagnant, but it does seem like we're starting to turn a corner, and judging by the prices we're seeing for feeders, replacement heifers, even the bred stock, there's some optimism out there for this cattle business. Opinions on the weather vary pretty widely across the West. We have seen improved moisture conditions in the southern plains and definitely some big snowstorms coming through, dropping a winter's worth of snow on some folks, more than you need at one time. But a lot of the West still dealing with drought, although we do have time to make up for it. To keep up to date on the long-term weather forecast, visit the Ag Risk Advisors website and watch the videos by Don Day and Brian Bledsoe. Some good stuff there. Getting back to our cattle futures, the nearby live and feeder contracts have really been punished over the last month here, but those deferred futures showing a lot more optimism. I think we can thank the stimulus money and restaurant business doing a little better. That should continue to improve. And leverage is beginning to gradually shift towards the cattle feeders and even a little bit further up the supply chain. That really becomes evident with those deferred futures, and there's potential here. If the economy fires back up, we're expecting exports to perform pretty well this year, and the effects of 2 years of smaller calf crops and new packing capacity, that should help these prices perform a little bit better. Speaking of new packing capacity, a new plant has been announced that'll go under construction in North Platte, Nebraska. It's going to be owned by both cattle producers and investors and will be processing 1,500 head per day when it comes online. And then a little further east in Tama, Iowa, National Beef is expanding their plant, taking the capacity from 1,100 head up to 2,500. Add that all together, and that's another 14,000 head per week capacity for the industry. Both those plants plan to be online by 2023. Looking at the cash cattle, we have seen some slight improvement here in the last 2 weeks after seeing flat prices for well over a month. The live sales 1 to 2 higher, mostly 115 to 116, and dress trade 3 to 4 better, primarily 183 up to 185. In our local markets, we are seeing that seasonal rally in calf prices approaching their spring highs. In Phillip Livestock in South Dakota, 5-weight steers were selling in the 180s, 6-weights in the 160s. Certainly demand on the heifers, both as feeders and replacements. 5-weight heifers selling in the mid-150s to low 160s. And some of the bigger replacements at our auction markets across the West getting over $1,000 a head, some up as high as $1,100. The demand on bred stock holding in. At Billings Live, they had a big sale in March featuring 1,500 head with 2 complete dispersions. Young cows sold from $1,450 to $1,675, solid mouth cows $1,150 to $1,350, and short-term cows $875 up to $1,050. We've had some strong bull sale results as well across the region. A lot of these sales have been 10 to 20% above last year's numbers, and some as high as 30%. We're talking $1,000 better on the average, so producers definitely appear to be investing in better genetics. You know, as we approach the end of our report here, I want to talk about a couple of federal policy items that producers need to be aware of. We've seen the reintroduction of a couple pieces of legislation that aim to address price transparency and discovery in cattle markets. The Cattle Market Transparency Act was introduced at the beginning of March and would establish regionally specific mandatory minimum thresholds for negotiated cash-fed cattle trade. It would require the creation of a marketing contract library and would require packers to report the number of cattle scheduled for delivery for the next 14 days. The second bill is known simply as 5014, and it would require packers to purchase 50% of their weekly fed cattle needs on that negotiated cash market, as well as reporting the number of cattle for delivery for the next 14 days. Both of these bills were introduced in the previous Congress, and obviously nothing happened. So it's important that livestock producers get a hold of their lawmakers and tell them whether they support these bills, which ones they support, if any. The best chance to get anything passed, if that's what the industry decides, will be in the mandatory price reporting reauthorization that comes up in September. Lastly here, USDA has announced another round of pandemic aid for livestock and crop producers. Now, this would be the third round of aid. We saw the 2 iterations of the CFAP program, and this one will include the direct aid payments that were allocated by Congress back in December. All cattle producers with approved CFAP1 applications will automatically receive payments in April based on inventory that was previously reported. The payment rates will be $7 a head for calves, $25.50 for feeders over 600 pounds, fed cattle getting $63 a head, and $17.25 for the cows. Remember, these are based off inventory that was reported almost a year ago in CFAP1. Producers of major crops like wheat, corn, soybeans, a whole host of crops, they'll receive a supplemental $20 per acre payment based on acreages reported in CFAP2. Remember, you don't need to reapply, those payments will be automatically issued. You can find more details on these complicated programs and legislation and a whole lot more information on your markets by visiting our website at northernag.net. Thanks so much to Ag Risk Advisors for sponsoring our Livestock Report again, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you down the trail.